Cool. Well, welcome. Thank you all so much for being here today for our May webinar with the Oregon Alliance to Prevent Suicide. We have some really good presentations and talks today with Donna-Marie and Galli just to share about some different firearm pieces that are happening in the state and also their counties and just some great work that's being done. Towards the end of our time together, if folks are interested, I know that part of this too is to kind of just look at and think through different advocacy or legislative pieces and if people wanted to get involved in what that could look like. So I can, towards the end, if people are interested, since we're such a small group, go through OLIS with folks, if people are interested in that. But if not, that's okay. And with that intro, I will pass it off to Donna Marie and Galli to do whatever you all would like to do.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks. I'm gonna start sharing my screen and then we'll launch into the content. So let's see here. All right, folks, can people see that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yay, yay, yay. Okay. So I actually can see you, so that's good. But if Donna-Marie, if you don't mind keeping just an eye on the chat, and I'll do the same when you're presenting too. But
Got it.
um, we are going to be talking today about some of the work that we have done here in Clackamas County in partnership with the firearm community to reduce firearm suicides. All right. We know that you all know that you are here for a presentation on firearm suicide reduction. But always, as we all know, it's just always a nice thing and important to name. These conversations can be hard and complex. So just please know there are resources for you, 988, and those of us in the room can take care of each other as well. Donna-Marie and I are always available to chat with people as well. So just want to make sure that you know. And then you all know, most of you guys know me, but just a little bit about me. I am the suicide prevention coordinator for Clackamas County. I will be celebrating basically my 16th year like as a permanent, like non-intern, non-temporary employee in the fall, but I've been around for about 20 years as an intern and temporary employee. Um, the majority of the time that I've spent at the county has been doing clinical work. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. My prior kind of experience was doing child and family therapy, and then I was the lead crisis clinician for the urgent mental health walk-in clinic that Clackamas County has on 82nd Avenue before I took the job of suicide prevention coordinator about 10 years ago, and super happy to be in this role. I'm going to pass it over to DM.
You. So thanks everybody for being here and those folks that are watching the video later on. Thank you for taking the time to do that. My cat in this picture may join us. She's been very naughty today. So yeah, so I apologize ahead of time for if I get disconnected, it's normally because they've stepped on something. So, a little bit about me. My name is Donna-Marie Drucker. I am a gun owner, which is why I enjoy this work so much. I am a daughter of a gunsmith, so firearms have been a pretty important part of my life. I'm also a wife of a combat veteran, so I really take supporting our veterans and our diverse groups of gun owners very seriously. Nobody is I think it's important to note that gun owners are very varied. They're not just one group of folks, and interventions need to be tailored for individual communities. I founded and run the Oregon Firearm Safety Coalition, which works directly with the firearm community to address firearms and suicide. I also run together with Veterans Northwest Oregon. That is our veteran arm and our rural arm that does this work. And I'm a mental health care professional. I am a clinician. I'm also a survivor of a youth suicide attempt. And that sort of is a very important reason to why I do this work, because if I'd found my father's handguns the night that I was struggling, I would have died. And that's been very impactful for me and this work because he had created time and distance. He had locked them away in a space that I could not gain access to them, which meant, even though I did still have an attempt, it was not a lethal attempt, which meant I got to live. And that's important because I've never had a second attempt. So this work that we do here really matters. This time and distance really matters. Giving people a second chance really matters. And and a lot of the stuff that we do here in this space with our firearm owners is that we have really honest conversations that, you can be a gun owner. I'm an avid gun owner, and you can still take very significant steps to make sure that you're keeping your family safe and that you are taking actions to prevent suicide. And we'll go through some of the work that we've done, and we'll talk about how receptive our firearm community has been around this messaging. Thank you. Next slide. So I won't spend too much time on this slide because you folks are, very involved in this. We know that I think for 2024, we have 931 suicides clocked, which is the highest I've seen it in a very long time. In 2023, suicide was the eighth leading cause of death in Oregon, which, I mean, we had the COVID years where sadly, it was, we reduced the rate of suicide, but sadly that was because we were dealing with another crisis, right? So it wasn't, I don't want to minimize all deaths are pretty hard on communities. And we see that, suicide's still a leading cause of death for our kids. And I know the Oregon Alliance here to prevent suicide is youth focused. And really for our youth, it's still the second leading cause of death. So work that we absolutely have to do here. And when we give presentations to the firearm community, what is notable is how many folks in the community do not know this. They do not know that this data is out there for our youth. They do not know the rate of suicide for our youth, and they do not know how often firearms are involved for our youth, and they do not know how often that is due to an unsecured firearm. So this slide here, where for us, like we're pretty aware of it, we know about the data. I include it because when we take this out into community, people's jaws drop. They just don't know. And when they do know, they tend to want to take action to create changes. Next slide. And Galli, I can't see the slide numbers. So you're going to have to tell me
Okay,
because we've worked it all out,
yep,
who's doing what, but and I'm not counting. So
this is slide 6. So
okay.
you're gonna go till
Okay.
10 here.
You'll let me know when you're
I'll let you know. I
I
got
think
you.
I know, but I just want to say. So a lot of the work that we do with firearm owners is time and distance. How do we make sure that there's zero unauthorized access to firearms? And that, how do we create the time and distance? And you can see from the images here, the railing there on the bridge is an evidence-based way to prevent suicide. And when we have these conversations in the firearm community, like we'll say, like, could somebody climb over that? And everyone's like, well, yeah, if you really wanted to. But it's hard and you have to activate your brain in different ways. So when we talk about guns, we're not talking about taking things away forever. We're not talking about taking away people's rights. We're just saying, hey, how can we create enough time and distance that you give yourself a chance to get through this crisis moment so you can go on? And we have found this to be really receptive. We talk about the gas changes in the United Kingdom, moving from coal to natural gas. We talk about pills and the blister packs and how it takes time to get the medication out and how that creates enough time and distance for people to start to question what they're doing, how it gives them enough time to move through that crisis. And then we have the lockers here, which is the next step where we talk about, hey, how about if we're securing all firearms? In a way, it creates time and distance. How about if we are moving firearms outside of the home just for a weekend, maybe for a few days, just to create that time and distance? Maybe it's a neighbor that's holding those firearms. It doesn't have to be this big, heavy forever. You're taking away my gun rights. You're taking away my firearms. Maybe it's just enough to get somebody over that hump, to get them the support that they need so that they can go on. Next slide, Galli. And then when we start to look at Oregon gun deaths, and this is data from 2023, we know that firearm owners are pretty safe. And I don't want to minimize any death here. Every life loss is a life lost too many. The accident deaths, I'm going to point out, in the firearm industry, we would call that negligence because if you are following the golden firearm rules around safety, it's really hard to have an accident. 7 is the highest I've ever seen that number in a couple of decades. And that is because we have so many new firearm owners, and we have so many new firearm owners from backgrounds that traditionally did not own firearms. So we're seeing people not necessarily having that training and that, not hearing their dad, yell at them that that firearm is always loaded. So we have like tripled deaths around negligence. And the ER visits, if we look at what the OHSU, they have a faster data system, which is tracking gun injuries in the ER visits, and that has seen an uptick as well. So we know that reaching out to gun owners, all gun owners, is very important, if nothing else, to sort of try to get folks connected to trainings. We look at legal intervention. 99% of those are law enforcement, National Guard, state police, all of those folks. Homicide, 131 too many, and then 489 gun deaths related to suicide. So what we do, we take into the community that 80% of gun deaths is suicide. And we ask people, because 90% of people own firearms for self-defense, we go out and we ask them who has a plan for when the threat comes from within the home? Who has a plan for when it is their kid, when it is their spouse, when it is their parents, when it is themselves? Because that legal intervention, self-defense moment almost never comes. But we know that we're losing kids far too regularly, and that if people have a firearm to protect their family from threat and harm, we kind of need to reframe that a little bit. And the stance that we take when we're doing this work is that you can unknow something. So once you know that suicide is the second leading cause of death for our kids, once we know that over 50% of youth suicide involve firearms, and nearly always that firearm comes from within the home, that starts to change things for parents. It starts to change things for gun owners. They're starting to see things slightly differently. Next slide. And why do we need to normalize conversations around guns? Well, I've already started to say a whole new batch of gun owners from people that traditionally did not own firearms in the past. Between 1999 and 2025, you can see that number there, 500 million plus NICS checks. And a NICS is a background check. That's something that happens when somebody purchases a firearm. This is national data, but there are hundreds of millions of firearms. Like it or lump it, the guns are there. And that's only that's like the last 26 years. There are hundreds of years worth of firearms in the country before they started background checks. And again, like it or lump it, there's guns that come in whether they're through background checks or not. We have no idea how many guns there are in America. And I can tell you from my father being a gun owner and an antique gun owner is that they don't go off. You can have guns that are hundreds of years old and they still work. So it's not like they have an expiration date and they crumble and we no longer use them. So when we look at the US population, we can see that there's like over 160 million more guns than there are people. And even though we throw million around like it's not a big number, it is a big number. 100 million is a huge number. 160 million is a massive number. And that is just the guns that we know about. So if we're willing to talk to somebody about what car they drive, do they smoke cigarettes? There's more gun owners than there are smokers. Yet every time we have a medical interaction, we get asked about smoking and vaping. So we need to be able to talk about firearms in a very natural, normal, relaxed way because so many folks have access to firearms. Next slide, Galli. So who owns guns in Oregon? They're in at least 50 to 60% of all homes, at least. Because if somebody called me and asked if I own guns, like a data survey, I would say no. And I'm pretty liberal. So, we have no idea. What I can tell you is that as a woman that lives in the Lake Oswego area, nobody ever asks me about my firearms, not my mental health care provider, not my PCP. There is just an assumption about who I am and what I might or might not have access to. So I know that in these conversations with people, when there's gaps because people make assumptions that that person probably doesn't have access to firearms. They're probably not in the home. And I'm here to let everybody know is that they probably are. Next slide. Because what we're seeing in our very left liberal kind of states is that they are outbuying the conservative states. If for Oregon, between January and March of 2025, we had 100,000 roughly NICS checks. California had closer to 400,000 and Illinois had closer to 900,000. So when I say who owns guns, it's LGBTQ plus, it's left, it's right, it's center, it's every religion, every ethnicity, every language, every age. Over 50% of new buyers are women, and women of color are outbuying men. So we really need to sort of change a little bit about who we think are gun owners and start to include everybody. Because at this point, I would say just about everybody in Oregon either owns a gun or has access to one. And I think the next slide is yours, Galli.
Yeah. So, folks, I'm going to talk a little bit about just like how did we start working with the firearm community here in Clackamas County, and I will say, for those of you who have heard me talk about this before, I am not a gun owner. I was born and raised in Seattle, Washington. Didn't have any, military affiliated individuals around me or my family. No one hunted, no one had firearms. And so being around guns was not something that I knew much about, nor was I very comfortable around. And being in this position for 10 years now, I knew as our firearm suicide rate in Clackamas County continued to increase, I knew that something needed to be done about reducing firearm suicides, but I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do, but I did know that I was not the right person to start those conversations, that I knew that I was not the most credible human to approach a firearm retail shop, an FFL. I knew that I wasn't the right person. I didn't have any credibility in the firearm community. And one day in the middle of the pandemic, I got an email from Donna-Marie, who I did not know at that time. I had not heard about the Oregon Firearm Safety Coalition. And basically the email had said, I would love I would love to work with Clackamas County. Are you interested in working with us to reduce firearm suicides? And I was so excited about getting this email because this is really what I had been waiting for. I had been waiting for someone who had that credibility to be able to assist me in better understanding how to have conversations with the firearm community in Clackamas County and how to bring folks to the table in a way that didn't other them and that didn't shut down conversations right from the get-go. So um, the beginning of what has been an amazing relationship with not just the Oregon Firearm Safety Coalition, but also with the Oregon Association of Shooting Ranges, the Oregon State Shooting Association, and Douglas Ridge Rifle Club, which happens to be in Clackamas County, in Eagle Creek, Oregon, which is a very rural part of our county and is the second or third largest gun club in the entire state of Oregon. We have partnerships now with all of these folks as a result of literally one conversation that happened during the middle of the pandemic saying, hey, let's work together. Donna-Marie, because she is a credible messenger, was able to introduce me to folks on the slide. And now I feel like I fit in to the puzzle, whereas before I really felt like I probably would have been very much an other and kind of like, what is this person from the government, quote unquote, being, in this space. And so this working together has been just a beautiful, beautiful relationship of really having conversations with these organizations and these groups around what can the county do to be of support of this work? And most importantly, what do you think the solution is to reducing firearm suicides? Donna-Marie and I and some other folks held some some focus groups around um, gun owners and whether or not they would talk to their healthcare providers, specifically their primary care doctor, around having guns, what if they would talk about it or why they would talk about it or why they wouldn't. And what we heard was really powerful, powerful statements from gun owners around why they don't share information. Essentially they felt like they would be shamed or judged, and that talking about being a firearm owner in their mind was really a recipe for having their firearms taken away. And we know that that is not true, that there isn't any, rule in Oregon that like as a healthcare provider, someone can call up a number and be like, take Donna-Marie's guns away. I'm worried about her. Like that's not possible. We do have ERPO in Oregon, the Extreme Risk Protection Order. And of the people who are the small group of people that can petition the court for removal of someone's firearms, a therapist is not one of those people, or a physician. No healthcare provider is on that list. So again, what we know is that gun owners are not talking about their gun ownership with the people who need to know most to have conversations around preventing unauthorized use because they feel like they're going to be judged and they feel like it'll backfire on them. So they just don't talk to them. So what we decided to do with the partnership that we have with the work that we did in Clackamas County, with the program that I'll talk about here in a minute, is that we really embraced the positive psychology model, which is a scientific approach that focuses on strengths instead of weaknesses. And we know that firearm owners are incredibly safe. That only, like Donna-Marie said, like 1% of gun deaths are accidental. 1%. So we know that, talking to a firearm owner about being safe, quote unquote, is really like they're gonna think like, come on, like I'm really safe. Don't talk to me about being safe. And so we knew that if we came at it from a place of, hey, you are as a gun owner, you are we know that you're incredibly safe. So can we use that strength to work towards reducing firearm suicides? And so here's what we did. We used this model that we call the baby box program that is, well, we didn't name it. It came out of Finland. And the Finnish government basically had this idea to basically provide a cardboard box, a cardboard package, which is still distributed today, and it is filled with the essentials for early life. So it has like diapers and bottles and even like the box itself serves as a crib, so something that a baby can sleep safely in. And what this did was it reduced the mortality rate for babies significantly. And so what we did is that we used this idea of getting the things that people need as an expectant parent. We use that idea to provide what we refer to as welcome boxes. And welcome boxes were something that were basically distributed initially through our Clackamas County Sheriff's Office through their Firearm Safety 101 classes that the Sheriff's Office facilitated. So everyone who attended the class got a box. The cool thing about it is that people from all over came to these firearm safety classes. It wasn't just Clackamas County folks. So even though the program is intended to serve Clackamas County folks, we know that other folks were showing up to get these classes, and as a result, we're getting these boxes. So these boxes were distributed to anybody who showed up. And again, they had lots of fun things in them, which I'll share with you in a minute. But prior to actually like assembling and distributing the boxes, Donna-Marie went around and got a ton of feedback from the firearm community and firearm instructors around what should go in these boxes. Like, what exactly do people need? What are some trusted, credible brands? And so here are some close-up pictures of kind of like what actually went in these boxes. So not only were there like items, so like you can see here, there's hearing protection, there is a biometric pistol vault here, or maybe that's just a lock vault, but we handed out lots of really cool things: trigger locks, a gun cleaning kit, eye protection, a cap for your head so the hot brass doesn't burn you, empty chamber flags. So you name it. Right here is a frame, a magnetic frame that you could put on your vault to have a picture of someone or something that means something to you. Again, time and distance. So we're getting people to slow down before they open up that vault, getting them to think about the things that are that they love. And then also we put in a bunch of literature, resource guide, basically NSSF information, you name it, lots of really cool stuff. So here's an actual list of like some of the things that went in, these things I've mentioned. But again, these things were really, really like people appreciated them. And Donna-Marie will talk a little bit about kind of what we heard because we actually surveyed folks. So Donna-Marie, passing it back to you.
There you
You
go. Thank
muted.
you.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for the reminder. Don't you love it that you can do that? So we distributed around 150 boxes through various locations. We started off with the sheriff's department with their 101 training, but because we were handing out hearing protection and eye protection, and that was something that they sold during that training, they then moved us to the conceal carry training, which was a slightly different demographic because the conceal carry training, instead of it being first-time gun folks, we now had folks that had a firearm. So that we kind of got a little bit of different feedback around that. We also, with our partnership with Douglas Ridge Rifle Club, they do new member orientation up at the club. So we also handed out welcome boxes during that space as well. And they normally get about 25 folks, 25 to 30 folks at any given training. So we and we also distributed at a couple of suicide prevention trainings. So at Douglas Ridge Rifle Club, we partner with them to hold free suicide prevention training, which is what we call our firearm and QPR, question, persuade, refer training. And we hold it at the club so folks feel like they're coming to a safe place to have a conversation around firearms and suicide prevention. So we sort of use multiple avenues to use trusted messengers to hand out the boxes. And when we handed out the first group of boxes, we did a first survey, which was sent out to them within a week or so of receiving the box. And then around 3 to 6 months later, we did a second survey. So in the first survey, here are some of the things that we learned. People had a very positive response. Everything is wonderful. I love that my community offers this generous package. Like people really felt supported instead of a lot of the feedback that we'd heard from firearms owners in our first couple of listening sessions is they always felt like they were the bad guy, that they needed to be punished. Like, you know, suicide prevention, you need to do better. So this, we sort of reframed it and being like, hey, let's give you stuff so we can give you all the tools to create the safest home, the safest community possible. And people really felt supported. And 100% of the respondents said that they will secure all firearms except for that self-defense firearm. Most folks said that, yeah, I'm going to use all of this stuff. But that self-defense firearm, I'm really like, I want to have immediate access to that. So even though we were hoping that people would then secure all of their firearms, it gave us a really key piece of information. It's that self-defense firearm. We can get everything else secured, but wow, how do we get people to secure that one in the same ways that they secure their other firearm? Next slide. So survey one, we had 25 respondents, and survey two, we had 10. Um, and of course, we always want more, right? We would love to have had 100% and 100%, but we gave out gift cards, digital gift cards for survey one and survey two. Survey one was $25, and I think survey two, we went up to almost $60 to get folks to participate, and that funding came from Together with Veterans Northwest Oregon for the gift cards. Survey one, key outcomes were that nearly everybody found the welcome box useful. Everybody got something from it that they felt was really important to them. 96% of people said that they were willing to complete a follow-up. Obviously, we only got about 50% of people that completed the follow-up, but they said they would, which meant we were starting to build that trust. Over 60% of folks said that they were more likely to securely store their firearms. And that was huge for us because that was the metric that we were really sort of looking for. Can we create behavioral changes? And again, taking that positive psychology note, like this is how we support our community. This is how we support each other. Now the facts. We also handed out like key information facts around suicide with the boxes. 80% of gun deaths are suicide. And once people know, like say, you can't unknow, the brain just doesn't do that. So you tend to move forward with that information. And our most common age group was like in the 50s to 60s. So 55 to 64. So we did capture some younger people, we did capture some older folks, but that main demographic. And here we'll see most folks found it useful, but their likelihood, increased secure storage likelihood, like again, over 60%. So we know that simply by providing people with some basic education, some tools and some resources was pretty powerful and not different to what they saw in Finland with their baby boxes, is that if you give people the tools and they use it, it actually can have pretty transformative impacts. Next slide, Galli. And then some of the recommendations, because this was a pilot program. So we're taking this program and we hope to move forward and continue to learn. And a few folks said like fewer products, like maybe we don't need to give somebody all of that, but higher quality items like biometric lock boxes, something that they might actually use for that self-defense firearm. Some folks suggested tailored boxes for veterans or for families so that we can actually drill it down to the specific groups. Some folks said including things like holsters and gloves and flashlights, other things that to keep their firearms safe and safe use. One of the reasons why we handed out eye protection and hearing protection was that upstream impact. We know people that have hearing loss have an increased risk around suicide. People with visual impairment, increased risk around suicide. So how do we start to protect people way upstream? And then some people were like, what about giving these out in armories or at veteran groups and things like that? So most of the recommendations were like, this is great. How do we get this out even further? Next slide. Somebody had a question, Galli. Can you?
Yes, so sorry.
No, that's okay.
Were the holsters suggested for their self-defense firearm or just in addition?
So holsters would mostly be for the self-defense firearm because that would be your concealed carry that you would have with you. And Oregon secure storage law, as it stands, as it's written, means that your firearm, if it's not on your person, as in you have a concealed carry license in a holster, then needs to be secured in a way that there's no unauthorized access. And the holsters are important because a quality holster will reduce the likelihood of accidental discharge in any capacity. So there's some safety aspects around that too. And then survey two, following up of these outcomes, we found that nearly 90% of folks were still using at least one of the secure storage items, which was really a really great result. Nearly 80% said it changed their firearm storage practices. And that was the ultimate goal. How do we change behavior? And again, giving people tools, knowledge, and skills and the resources to implement them, really impactful. Around 90% of people said that they would recommend the box to somebody else. And around 90% of people reported that they believe that the boxes had the best likelihood of reducing firearm accidents and misuse risk. So the fact that, guns could be stored in a way that was secure, the fact that they were giving resources around where to get trained, how to connect with gun clubs, just increased their knowledge around firearms, which meant that they were getting like a whole package: secure storage, knowledge, education, training. We also handed out medication disposal bags and medication lock boxes and resources around naloxone. So around 50% or 40 to 50% reported that they felt that it was going to reduce medication accidents and misuse. And Around 30% of respondents said that they had participated in a firearm safety training, which again is an outstanding result because that's number of 7 of accidental deaths. We need to get that down to 0 because if people are trained and they're connected to the right resources and groups, that number should not be can absolutely be at 0. So we want to get ER visits down, we want to get deaths down, and firearm safety training is absolutely the way to go for that. And then recommendations, everybody sort of said, please continue to provide quality, secure storage devices, like keep this going. One person recommended, and I thought this was really interesting, offer a choice between locks or a gift card for safes. So if people wanted connections to even more powerful gun storage, right? To wall safes or stand-up safes. So instead of saying, hey, you're giving me this that's worth like $200 or $300, could I get a credit towards a safe? And I think that's definitely something that we can look at. I know tax credits for gun safe is something that other states have participated in. I think Rep. Tran was looking at something for that this year. I don't think it got off the ground, but that is something that other states do really well. They'll be like, hey, you want to securely store your firearms? Let us help you do that. Other things like cleaning and chamber flags. Oh, no worries. Um, we didn't
Sorry,
hand
folks.
out. No, that's okay.
It was the cat. Sorry, it's my cat
No,
that did
it's
that,
your
not
cat.
yours.
Oh, I love
Hold
it. I
on.
love it. Um, so there were other suggested items that we could sort of add in. Almost there. There you go. And promote and incentivize safety training. So people were really all about the training. Hi, kitty cat. Um, I'm not sure that like Leatherman and cleaning wipes and stuff like that are necessary. I mean, cleaning wipes, we gave a cleaning kit. So, I mean, splitting hairs there. The chamber flags, which you saw in the image, we did not hand out in too many of the boxes. They were quite expensive, but an empty chamber flag is a universal way of making sure that the firearm is clear, which is step one in making sure that it is safe. So that is definitely something that we would be handing out in the future. And we definitely want to promote training. So next slide. So what's next? So this welcome home or welcome boxes, safer home boxes, not a baby in a box as it started off being called, has been incredibly successful because it really not only helped us connect with gun owners, but it gave us additional insight into what folks want, what they're doing already, and how we can support them in the future. So one of the next steps is going to be focus groups around those secure storage items to really learn a little bit more about that self-defense firearm and what storage device we could be handing out that they would use for that self-defense firearm. Because having 99% of firearms secured is phenomenal. We want that. But if there's one firearm that is left unsecured, that means unauthorized access is a possibility. And we want to get it to 100%. Other initiatives that are happening that are not connected to this project, but I'm going to talk to them a little bit. We have a blueprint grant in Clackamas County. So we have been working with a community outreach liaison that is have been contacting Clackamas County FFLs, and they have been making real amazing headway. We have about 3 or 4 FFLs that are now promoting suicide prevention materials. They have some posters up, and we're going to get about 5 more connected with that. And then we're going to be having some meetings with those folks to try and figure out how we can help them engage more with suicide prevention and maybe handing out some of these secure storage items and really trying to take that next step, which is that out-of-home storage, which is the next thing that we're launching is going to be the Oregon Armory, which is a project that we're going to be piloting with 3 or 4 FFLs, which is based off of the Armory project that started out in Louisiana. We've been partnering with those folks. So we're going to be launching a website and have a bunch of FFLs that are connected to sort of try to really encourage this out-of-home storage and collect data around that, provide suicide prevention trainings in the FFLs, and really just starting to partner way more with gun shops. Galli, did you take the slides down intentionally? Okay. Just
Yeah, I didn't know since you were talking. I was just wanted to have you see people and then I'll put them back up when you're
no,
ready.
no, that's great. I just wasn't sure if the cat had stepped
No,
on
no,
something
no. And
again.
I'm gonna drop the Armory project information in the chat so
Awesome.
folks can see that. It's a really cool for folks who are not familiar with it. It's a really cool thing.
So this pilot project just keeps rolling, basically. We've learned a bunch and now we're going to learn more, and then we're going to take what we've learned and keep rolling with it. It's been pretty impactful, I think, and it's really been bringing the firearm community and the county together to work on this, and that has just been it's been really amazing seeing firearm owners feeling supported. And when they feel supported, they want to take the actions. They want to be a part of it versus, again, that like that punishment versus like, oh, you have guns. How are you storing them? Being like, oh, you have guns. Great. Here's some ways for you to store them. Let us support you in this. And how can we support other folks in your community? It's been really amazing to get the feedback, the data, and we're just going to continue to move forward with it. Galli, I'm going to pass it to you.
I will add folks just before DM transitions to the other piece of this presentation, is that again, as the person who represents the government, I like Donna-Marie and I just had a meeting with this person who's really helping move this work forward, and he's a very credible human being in the firearm community, and someone who you know, 4 years ago, I would have probably never been in the same room with, just because of me being the government, quote unquote, and not, you know, having probably not sharing a lot of the same like values, maybe. But we all are coming together under this like really passionate, like some of the things he said today was like, he's like, I appreciate you all being in my corner. We're all in the same corner. It is like, it's just really incredible work that just like, it gives me goosebumps, that we're able to do this. And it literally took just again, one person who was Donna-Marie, who was this credible human being in the firearm community to really broker all these relationships. And now it's just like, it's amazing. So it really, I just want to emphasize it doesn't take a lot to do this. It takes credible messengers to do this work. And you build trust and you engage and then all this amazing work happens.
Any questions before I get into firearm legislation? I put it all into one slide deck, Jen, just so that, and we can do questions at the end. Um,
Are you all ready to do this in your counties? How can we help you?
all right. So we're going to move into firearm legislation. I want to say stuff is moving quickly and changing, and there's a bunch of gut and stuff. So I don't have, all the information that maybe, well, I have a bunch of information. Um, So House Bill 3884 was the limited liability law. So we just, Galli put a note in about the Armory project. The Armory project has been successful in Louisiana because Louisiana passed a limited liability law for FFLs to encourage them um, to basically secure firearms off sites. A lot of FFLs or gun shops basically said, I'm concerned about liability. If I return this firearm and something negative happens, am I going to lose my livelihood because I'm going to be sued? So what Louisiana sort of moved forward with a bunch of veteran groups, they were like, hey, our veterans are dying. We need offsite storage. Can we just, if somebody's holding a firearm and they return it in good faith, as in like that person is not showing signs of being in crisis, they're not intoxicated, all the basic ATF rules, and that person returns the firearm, can we limit any liability for future actions taken? And just to say, like, I don't know of any firearm FFL gun shop that has been sued by somebody after returning a firearm, but it was an innate fear. Everybody has the same fear. So it was, and Louisiana passed this law, and they have developed a pretty robust out-of-home storage map with FFLs because now they feel like they can engage in providing off-site storage for gun owners and our veteran community without fear of being sued if something negative happens. And other states such as Texas, Washington, and a bunch of other states that I'm forgetting the whole list have also passed these laws and are having pretty strong results around providing, developing secure storage maps for out-of-home storage for gun owners. So in Oregon, we have tried a couple of times. This House bill is our third attempt at passing a limited liability law for FFLs, and I don't believe it's going to move forward. I think that we're going to not have the success that we're wanting to. We wanted this bill to pass so that we could launch the Oregon Armory and develop our own robust out-of-home storage network. But we're going to launch the Oregon Armory anyway, and we will keep trying to pass the limited liability law. Next slide. So other firearm measures, House Bill 3075. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Measure 114 that has been in the courts for the last 2 years after it was passed. This is a bunch of amendments. The amendments include things like clarify where to apply for a firearm permit. Oh, so let me back up. It is permit to purchase a firearm. I will not assume that everybody knows what Measure 114 is. So the idea here is that to purchase a firearm, you have to take some training, you have to have a fingerprints and background checks, wait period, and then you get a permit to purchase a firearm. Other states have permits. Oregon has run into a lot of issues around their permitting because the requirements of the law, there wasn't anything in place to make it happen. So you could say, hey, you need to get a training to get a permit, but the training didn't exist. Therefore, somebody couldn't get a permit, and therefore, obviously, that's a whole legal kerfuffle. So it has been in the courts for the last couple of years. And I believe these amendments are trying to make it easier to sort of unwind those legal issues and make it easier to get a permit. So it clarifies where to apply for the firearm, and the permits have expanded eligibility criteria, such as at the bottom, it includes exemptions for active and retired law enforcement, because they're assuming that those folks have all this training already. It extends permit timeline from 30 to 60 days. It was almost going to be impossible to get that permit in 30 days because of the backlog it would create in the state police background system checks. So, this is a way to make it more doable. It has increased the fee of the permits and the renewal fees, which, I have mixed feelings about when we're thinking about equity, because again, like it or lump it, gun ownership is a constitutional right, and it shouldn't just be for those that can afford it. It provides confidentiality about applicant data, that people had a lot of fear that their data would be known and sold, and gun owners particularly do not want their data sold. And it's going to offer alternative training options. So hopefully that's going to include training online, because what we had again was you need to get this training, but the training isn't available. So I believe that this is in Ways and Means right now. It's probably almost certainly going to move forward and pass. Pros and cons to this, and I do try to take a neutral position. We know that permits can be very helpful around suicide prevention training, because you do need to get training to get a permit. And training means that we have an opportunity to include suicide prevention training into the permit process. It also creates natural wait times, because while people, like, if somebody is in crisis and just wants to purchase a firearm, but they have to get a permit first, that creates some time and distance. The downside to the permit for suicide prevention, and I've said this many times, is that, I have X amount of firearms. If I do not wish to purchase any more firearms, I do not need a permit. Now, if I want to get my guns out of the home because one of my kids is having a hard time, I can't do that without a permit, because they can't return the firearms to me. So that creates a barrier to me engaging in the best practice for suicide prevention by getting my guns out of the home. So I'm hoping that if this passes, that we can have some kind of carve out around suicide prevention and out of home storage. Because if it takes 6 months to get a permit and my kid's in crisis now, I want the guns out of my home now. So again, everything is, pros and cons. But a lot of people have guns in their homes already, and they don't need to get a permit to have those guns. Therefore, we need suicide prevention for those folks that already have access to firearms. Next slide. And then Senate Bill 243 is waiting periods, and plus some other things. So implements a 72-hour waiting period for a firearm purchase. So once, okay, somebody had a question.
Yeah, so how can a permit be required if they are already in a person's possession?
It's to
Yeah.
purchase new firearms. So that's,
So if you want to get a new gun, you have
yes,
to get a permit.
So,
yeah.
but if I, sorry,
No, go ahead.
No, ask questions.
if I take them then because I'm concerned about a member of my family and I take them somewhere and they are mine, proven mine, I'm giving them to someone to store. How is it that they can't give those back to me without a permit?
Because the law reads that if you don't have a permit, an FFL can't return those firearms to you.
So that would only be for FFLs.
Yes, if it is between, if let's say you are holding your daughter's guns,
Yep.
which the law allows us to do, that's different, because that's not registered anywhere. That's just between you two.
And how does that fit into the sheriff's department?
It wouldn't.
Okay.
That
Okay.
falls under the what is it? The temporary transfer law, Michelle, so that
Okay.
currently on the
Well, that's
book.
what I was wondering about. I'm like, but if in fact these are mine and I'm transferring them to your care, that's what I saw it being under. So it didn't make sense to me that a permit would have to be required. But now it makes sense with it
Right.
being the FFLs only.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
If I
Yeah.
understand it correctly, DM, it's like there's the temporary transfer law, which allows me to give you my guns, DM,
Yeah.
as long as you're legally able to have them. And that's between DM and I. That's she and I could decide when my guns come back to me, nobody else needs to know. But if I don't have any friends or family that can temporarily hold my firearms, like Donna-Marie was saying, like if my kid's having a hard time and I want my guns out of the house and I want to take them to an FFL, in order for me to get them back, I need a permit. And that might, or right, is that my
That's going to
understanding?
be
Yeah.
And so
okay.
it takes
That seems like
time.
it'll be a really tough, as a gun owner, it seems like that will be a really tough sell for gun owners because that puts the block up. We don't want people to know already. We don't want to share, there's so much going on already, that the concern of then, well, if I turn these over to the wrong people, I'm not going to be able to
Right.
get them back.
Right. And I'm hoping that, once that all comes into law, that we can make an amendment somewhere to make, and I haven't figured it out yet because I don't know what the law is going to look like.
Right.
It's been so many years in the courts, but eventually, like, because 80% of gun deaths are suicide,
Right.
we tell people get them out of the house as like
Right.
the golden standard. We need to make sure that those interactions with FFLs and that can happen without a permit if the person doesn't have one, really.
Right.
So
Right. No, all makes perfect sense. Thank you for the time.
absolutely. Jen?
I was just wondering, you mentioned DM that if you were to hold your daughter's gun, that's kind of like allowed within the legal availability right now for like who can hold our like firearms for us. And I'm sorry that if you said this, is it okay if you, because it's a short list, is it okay if you share that like list with folks to kind of say like who can like hold that your firearm if needed? Because I remember that we were trying to expand that list because it is so limited, but we weren't able to move that through.
Right. I think the way the law is written today is that anybody that you trust and that is, I say that if you know that they're not not a felon, just because you don't want to go down that road, anybody can hold the guns. It does not have to
Okay.
be a family member. It can
Okay.
be anybody. And that's why we also get into, hey, disassemble the firearms and give those non-regulated components to people to hold because anybody can hold that, even if they are a felon. But yeah, the way that the crisis law works is that anybody can hold that.
Okay.
But I can definitely write something up if that would be helpful.
Oh no, that was just great. I remember that being a conversation before with other folks, and so I just wanted to just because you specifically mentioned like the daughter piece and like that being a legal thing, it just sparked that for me of just kind of
Yeah, yeah. It's
talking
more about
through
like
that.
if you engage with an FFL, like we want offsite storage, we want the offsite storage map, but then we want to make sure that if the permit laws do come in, that people can engage with those services with or without a permit, because we still want people to be able to get guns out of their home. But if there's a family member or friend or trusted person that can hold the gun, that's also an absolute legal option for folks.
Jen, I also wonder, you might be thinking of the ERPO law, the Extreme Risk
Mhm.
Protection Order, which has
Yeah.
a very short list. Right, DM? It's like of people who can petition the court. It's like spouse, law enforcement, like it's very short.
Yeah, hmm, maybe.
That could be, yeah, for sure. Thank you both so much for that. I appreciate it. And just for kind of clarifying and talking through some of that.
Yeah. Galli, can you put the slides back up?
For sure. Here we go.
Thank you. Excellent. So the other thing that this law does, it bans rapid fire conversion devices such as bump stocks. This is interesting because I didn't think that they were legal anyway, but I don't know, I guess they're trying to clarify that. But what it does is that a couple of years ago, a law around concealed carry came in that said, hey, schools and people can opt to say, even if you conceal carry, you cannot conceal carry on my property. And this grants local governments power to regulate firearms in public buildings. So it's just sort of expanding on that idea that people can say, yeah, you have a concealed carry license, but on school, on school lands and government lands, we can say that even with that concealed carry, you cannot do that here. A lot of folks that are concealed carry licensees are very concerned about this because they're worried that they're just going to like walk across the street and end up like not being within compliance of the law. The irony there, though, is that concealed carry law means that nobody knows you've got a gun. So it kind of, if you're, concealed carry is the absolute opposite of open carry. Nobody would ever know. You could walk past it and be on your merry way. There's not going to be gun detector devices all over all these properties and stuff like that. So people are concerned about becoming felons unintentionally because then they can't have firearms. But again, like, that some people be like, well, I'm driving my car down a street and I'm, suddenly on this, in X amount of proximity to this, am I now not legally allowed to have my firearm with me? It's kind of like splitting hairs. Again, like even with the law that passed a couple of years ago, I haven't heard of a single person being prosecuted or accused of being on property with a firearm when they weren't supposed to be. And again, mostly because nobody should ever know that you have that firearm. So even if people were naughty, we would never know about it. And then the idea with the wait period is that it aims to reduce that impulsivity around buying firearms. So if somebody, is in crisis and they want to just go buy a firearm, they're going to have 72-hour wait period before that they can have access to that firearm. That's if they have a permit already, because permit could take a few months. So again, like we're catching multiple folks here. Wait periods have been shown evidence-based to have a reduction in suicide. So I think with regards to suicide prevention, this bill, the wait periods is definitely not a bad thing. Again, how all these bills are going to interact with one another, I don't know. Galli, next slide. Do I have one more? Yes, House Bill 3076, gun dealer licensing. So the idea behind this and the suicide prevention sort of lens here is that this bill aims to prevent straw purchases, which is purchases of somebody who is legally able to buy a firearm, but then they provide it to folks that should not have access to a firearm. So it establishes a state level licensing program for gun dealers. There's already a federal licensing program. So don't think that gun shops just operate. The ATF has very strict rules and things like that. It is not easy to be a gun dealer in Oregon. But this would create a state level program, which I believe exists in a couple of other states already. It would be administered by the Oregon Department of Justice, and it enhances oversights and compliance with firearm safety regulations. So a lot of this, if you look at the bill, is around storage of firearms and security for FFLs. Like, do they have cameras? Do they, a lot of FFLs are not visited often by ATF for folks to sort of check to see how things are going and if people are compliant. So the idea here is that there would be able to be more state checks to make sure that FFLs are operating as they should be. The pushback with this is a lot of FFLs are concerned that the amount of money it will cost to become compliant with this new law will put them out of business. So a lot of FFLs are saying we'll just close. We will see. People talk about closing, but when it comes down to it, maybe they'll figure it out. If the bill passes, what will the bill look like when it is passed? My only concern around this bill when it comes to suicide prevention is that if FFLs do go out of business, people will still purchase guns. I liken it to prohibition in the United States. people did not stop drinking alcohol, and there were many places in each state where you could purchase alcohol. So, as you saw from our earlier presentation, everybody is buying guns. Everybody. If there's not many avenues to legally purchase firearms, people will still purchase firearms, but there will not be background checks. There will not be wait periods. It'll be harder to implement ERPOs because they won't be acknowledging that they have firearms. So, while I'm not necessarily against this bill, not against licensing for FFLs, I hope it's sort of delivered in a way that, again, taking that positive psychology approach instead of telling FFLs that they're the problem and there's all the things that they have to do, that there's actually funds for it and that they help FFLs become compliant. Because especially in our rural areas where there's only a couple of FFLs, if they go out of business, people are still going to find a way to buy guns, which can create unintended consequences. And I'm happy to be recorded saying that because I've said it many places already. Because we want to engage with our gun owners, we don't want to push them underground. So we'll see where this one goes. Next slide, Galli. I think, yes, that's it. That's the end of our presentation. There are other suicide prevention bills, as you know, but they're not necessarily, Jen, connected to firearms. There's veteran ones and stuff like that. So I just kept it to firearm stuff for you. Otherwise, I would talk all day. Nobody wants that at all. And I'm not a lobbyist, so I don't understand all the things there, and I might not be able to answer all of your questions, but I will try. Yes. Yes. Michelle said more concerns of people leaving them in their vehicles. We're trying to hand out secure storage devices for cars, for vehicles, so that even if they do leave it in their vehicle, that it's securely stored so there's no unauthorized access. Because a lot of firearms that get used in crimes are taken from cars that are not securely stored. So.
Yeah, DM, that's when you were talking about the concealed carry and people not being able to take them into buildings or thinking that they can't, and just worried about that, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't go in there with this, so I'll leave it in the car.
Yeah, there's always there's unintended consequences for each thing. And we're trying to find that wraparound to make sure that we have a solution for all of those things. But that is definitely something that has come up many times. All right, folks. Questions?
While folks think about questions, I just wanted to thank you both so much for your time and your expertise in coming to share all of this with everybody today. It's so very much appreciated, and I think that especially this topic, right now, I think is a really good thing to be able to hear about and to talk about, and just to see the really good work that's being done and the hope that you all are spreading and the connections that are being made. So thank you all, thank you both so much for this. If people are interested in trying to do something like this in their neck of the woods, would it be okay to connect them with you all for that? Okay, cool.
I just want to say thank you for this work. I'm like tangentially involved, and as well as just like all the wonderfulness and lives that you're saving in this work. I just want to point out that in this moment in time, it feels incredibly hopeful for there to be a space where people who have different perspectives and values and are really been pitted against each other to come together in this work. I'm just in like meeting after meeting where it's like a lot of fear and pain about changes that are happening. And I'm really grateful just to have this work happening. And I want to see it in all the state, because I think like this is what's going to save us moving forward, is us engaging, and like this is a place we can do it in Oregon. So thank you.
Lucina, thank you. I hear your emotion, and it makes me a little teary. And it's like this work is actually, I always say it gives me hope in a way that I never thought I would feel. And yeah, in this time and age right now where our world is like, this stuff is just really like being in these meetings where, again, people from really polar opposites of of beliefs and voting and all those things come together and for the purpose of supporting this work collectively, it really like it has filled my cup in a way that I never even imagined. And it really like it carries me in the dark days when things don't feel like they're going well. I'm like, this work really makes a difference. These things really make a difference, and they are getting bigger and bigger and bigger as we continue to talk about it and share the information. And with all of you, you think about it, you talk about it with your colleagues and your folks, and that's how we get this work done. And it just, I don't know, it fills my cup.
Yeah. Thank you, Lucina. And you are such an important part of this work because I know that you're doing amazing stuff, and I can't wait to catch up with you. I know I probably owe you an email or something, but or 10. But it is very hopeful. We had a meeting this morning where we're talking about how sometimes it's little steps, but all these little steps add up. Like we're now sending a very credible messenger in person, inside of FFLs, and they're having hours-long conversations, and they're connecting with folks, and they're like, yeah, I do want to be a part of this. And when we started the Firearm Safety Coalition, the one thing that we learned real quickly is that gun owners want to be part of the solution. They're just not been asked yet. Not, and I say asked, they've been told a whole bunch about different things, but to say, hey, what can we do together? And what we learned is that there was so much more that connected us than ever divided us. Nobody wants their loved ones to die by suicide, period. And if you can just focus on that, all the rest kind of melts away. And that has been the foundation of the work that like everybody in here is doing. And it's starting to make a difference. It's starting to create behavioral changes. It's starting to make the conversation so much easier. 5 years ago, people were like, oh, I can't ask about guns. Now it's like, well, yeah, of course, everybody's talking about guns. And it's just become more normalized. And once it's more normalized, it becomes easier. And when it gets easier, it just becomes more normal. So then it just becomes this great cycle of like, how do we make a difference here? And we're seeing younger gun owners really engaging. And therefore, like, even though that's like talking about upstream, I know we have folks that we want to connect with that are older adults, and we don't want to forget about those folks. But at the same time, engaging with young gun owners, which are now teaching their kids that this is what gun ownership looks like. It's secure storage 100% of the time, means that their children won't think that there's any other way but to secure 100% of the firearms 100% of the time. And I liken it to drinking and driving, because like my dad really struggled to get his mind around not going to the pub and driving home, because that's what you did. You drove to the pub, you drank, so then you had to drive home. My generation, I was like, no, you don't drink and drive. And my kids would never even consider it. So it takes a couple of generations. So even though the work can feel like, oh, this, like, are we getting anywhere? We are. We are. And everybody's a piece of the puzzle. So thank you.
Michelle put a comment in the chat if folks wanted to be able to read that.
Yeah, I appreciate that so much, Michelle. I'll also add too that when the first iteration of the Youth Suicide Intervention Prevention Plan came out many, many years ago, I was one of the many folks that sat around the table to develop that plan. I was pretty new in my position, but there was a explicit statement made by the folks that were organizing it, that talking about firearms and talking about like putting anything in the YSIP that had anything to do with firearms was an absolute no. We weren't going to do it. And I think about like what our current YSIP looks like, what the ASIP looks like, the Youth Suicide Intervention Plan, the Adult Suicide Intervention Plan, and like all of this work, like we're talking about it, and it's so hopeful. And I think about that wasn't that long ago when we developed that plan in the grand scheme of things. Well, thank you for making time, folks, to have Donna-Marie and I come and share. And again, if there's anything that any of us, that Donna-Marie and I can do to help move work forward in your communities or in your organization, even if it's just like we don't know where to start, please let us know. We'd be happy to have conversations with folks. And I sent the slide deck to Jen, so
Thank you.
so that's available to you all as well.
And I'm not able to send out emails right now. We're looking into it. So as soon as I can send emails, you all will receive the slide deck.
I'm
So
so sorry. I mean, that's kind of a blessing and a curse, though, if you think about it.
it is, yeah. I'm still able to receive them. I just can't respond to them.
Oh
So
my gosh. Oh, Monday.
yeah. It says that my email is connected to spam. So we'll see. We'll figure it out.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And just a really quick minute, I won't go in super depth, but because especially Donna-Marie went over some different pieces of legislation, I just wanted to show everybody if you wanted to be able to get involved and if you're able to share testimony on our government website on OLIS, this is what kind of the current home screen looks like. If you go to bills up here in this corner, I think 3075 was one of the ones that you mentioned. You just type in the bill number, or if you even wanted to look at bills by text, you could also do that. And it will pull up the piece of legislation. You can look at the different versions of it, but specifically the testimony piece in the register and the submit testimony. If there's an upcoming scheduled meeting, so if there's not a scheduled meeting, you won't be able to submit testimony. But if there is an upcoming meeting, you can then see. So like if there's nothing scheduled, then you can't. But if you wanted to, you could go to the submit testimony, and then if you want to do verbal testimony, you can go to the register to testify. And as you can see, there's lots of different pieces of sometimes groups get on and they just kind of, I've seen testimony where it just says, I oppose this, and that's all that there is. So you can really submit anything that you want to, be as detailed or as short as you want. But sometimes when groups don't like things, there's, um,
So if it's firearm legislation,
yeah,
the Oregon Firearm Federation
yeah,
he sends something out and then everybody just basically says the same thing. So you'll see a lot of oppose,
mhm,
but you know, it's still it's still impactful
yes,
to provide testimony and if there's all opposed and you're in support, then there's a better chance that yours is going to get read because it's different.
yes, yeah. Yes. And so and from my understanding too, I mean, verbal and also written testimony, what we've been told is it's taken into the same kind of consideration. So it's read by, if not the legislators themselves, and by their staff, and it's kind of that information is given over to the legislator. But if that's one way that you all are able to engage in this process, if you are able and wanting to, I know some of our positions kind of keep us from doing that. So but if that's something that you're wanting to do, or if you even just want to follow it, you can hit the e-subscribe and then you just enter your email and then you'll be sent email updates anytime it moves through the process. Because right now it's like Donna-Marie said, Joint Committee on Ways and Means. So that's that. Any other final questions or thoughts or anything before we end today? Okay. Well, thank you all so much for your time, for whether you're here in real time or if you're watching this recording later on. We appreciate all that you do, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day. And thank you all so much.